Arctic Monkeys just released another album called The Car. And, I'm a big fan of the Arctic Monkeys. I do like a lot of their, most popular songs, but I haven't really dove into like a lot of their albums, like Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino, where they kind of shifted from AM and, a lot of their earlier records where they're kind of just making like the rock music to please a lot of people, which, in my opinion, did sound really good. But, a lot of people weren't a fan of the new kind of direction they took with Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino, and they kind of follow that one on this album, The Car. And, I was, a really big fan of production on a lot of these songs. I think the production is probably the thing they kill the most on this album, but I think a lot of Alex's lyrics are just kind of these super extended metaphors, which aren't really a bad thing, but it kind of will take a listener multiple times to listen to these super extended metaphors about relationships between him and his lover, or just him and like how he's anxious about things and how he feels kind of alone, and how the band has changed from, what they used to be to what they are now. And, these extended metaphors aren't really my thing, but, as you listen to the album more and more, they could really work a lot better. And I just think, the album was it's a little bit just too convoluted for like a first time listener and someone who doesn't really want to continue to listen to the Arctic Monkeys, like this album at least. But I think this album was well produced, and I think it's definitely a good album. And here's just like a little track by track one. I will say though, the first half of the album is a lot worse than the second half. I feel like there are a lot of good songs on the second half. But let's start off with There's Better Be a Mirror Ball. I like the jazz-inspired production. Alex Turner's vocals sound pretty good on this song. The song is, just a little too slow for me, and I don't really think it adds anything. I think it kind of is just like a little boring song. But the lyrics do work with, like, relating back to the car, where it could be like symbolizing the end of a relationship or the end of time together with someone, like your lover or whatever. It really kind of depends. Like I said, these extended metaphors are kind of up to your interpretation. Like, he's not going to come out here and kind of spell it out for you. So it kind of is up to the listener's interpretation. Then, I ain't quite where I think I am. I think the production is pretty similar to the one before, where it's more jazz oriented. Alex's voice sounds really good on the chorus, and the production does get a lot more lofty and, sounds really good as the song goes on. And then we can go to Sculptures of Anything Goes. The production is kind of a lot more dark on this one. It's just a lot different, and it is similar with kind of like the jazz and the strings and everything, but it's a lot like darker, and the delivery on some of the lines just doesn't really work. I feel like it doesn't sound well with the beat, and it just doesn't, work well. But it's fine, but it just doesn't fit with the production that well. I do like his vocals though. Just the delivery is, off, and it does sound, a little bit more unique compared to the first two songs at least, and just like a little different while in the same kind of vein. Then we go to Jet Skis on the Moat. This is the one where I was really like, bro, what is up with these extended metaphors? He's talking about jet skis on the moat. He's talking about something else, and I was just like, bro, what are you doing? The production is pretty interesting. The lyrics kind of are just thrown in there as a super extended metaphor, and they're just like a little weird, like jet skis on a moat. Doesn't make sense, but, it means something in his terms or whatever. But the production does sound good, and I think Alex's vocals do work on this one. Then we go to Body Paint. I actually really like this one. The production sounds really good, especially with the strings, and I think Alex sounds good with the delivery on the song. The instrumental break kind of works well with allowing the instruments to kind of have their own little time in the album, and I think the instruments do sound really good on that part as well, so it does work. And with a lot of these extended metaphors, you kind of have to let the listener kind of digest these lyrics, and that kind of does allow the listener to process the lyrics. And then Alex repeats kind of the chorus about the body paint and how like a lover, probably left body paint. You can kind of just like know that when they're having an affair, they leave parts of themselves on the other people they have the affair with, and vice versa. And I really like the refrain because Alex repeats the line multiple times, talking about this affair, but every time it's a little bit more unique and a little different, which sounds really good, and it just, gives each time he says it like its own little unique twist, which I think works really well. Then we go to The Car. I think the production on this one is a lot more stripped down with just the piano and guitar at the beginning, but then it kind of slowly builds up and adds more and more instruments. And I think as a title track, this one does sound pretty good, and I think the production just is really good on this song, and Alex's voice fits the dark, gloomy vibe of, the song and just everything. And then that electric guitar kind of gives that same vibe when it comes in at the end, and I just think it works. Then we go to Big Ideas. Alex's voice, sounds good, and the production lets the voice be the main part of the song. The production's definitely behind the voice, which I think is not a problem on this album, but sometimes they'll conflict with each other. But I think the production and Alex's voice work really well. I think this is one of the better songs on the album. They kind of work hand in hand together, and the production and Alex's voice kind of get their own time to shine, so it works really well. And then I think the song works, the production and vocals, work well together, and, adds to the track. And I just think the electric guitar at the end also adds. I like how they kind of throw it in some of these points. And then we go to Hello You. I like this one a lot as well. The production is a lot more soul-inspired, I guess you could say so. At least when I've listened to soul tracks, they do sound pretty similar to this. So I think there is a little bit of soul inspiration on this one. And Alex's voice is a little bit falsetto on this one. He tries to pull off the falsetto, and it kind of works in parts, but it kind of doesn't. He uses it a lot on the chorus, or uses it on the chorus, and it works with him juxtaposing the higher voice with the deeper voice. But I feel like the deeper voice works a lot better on this actual track. But I still think it's a solid track. If only there was a little bit less falsetto, I think it would be a much better track, but it still works well, and I still think Alex put in a really solid performance on this one. So I do definitely like this, and I think it's probably one of the better tracks on the album, but I think the deep voice worked a lot better with the production on this one. And then we go to Mr. Schwartz. I like the string production, and, Alex's vocals sound good, even with him trying to also force the falsetto on this album. But the lyrics are kind of all these extended metaphors. I was looking at the Genius page, and people don't even know what Mr. Schwartz is. He kind of just made it up after he saw it on Alfa Romeo, which I was like, I don't know. It doesn't relate to me as a listener. Like, some of these do, but because he uses these super deep and complex extended metaphors a lot on the album, it doesn't really hit as much as a listener because I don't understand it, as well on the first listen. On the second listen, it kind of throws you off, when you're listening to it one or two times, or if you're just a casual listener, trying to add something to your playlist, which, I don't really suggest. I think you got to actually listen to this album all the way through, and you can kind of see the themes and everything like that. But I just feel like it doesn't really work on this, especially with me, where I don't get these, extended metaphors without having to dig deeper into the lyrics, like super deep into the lyrics. And then I don't know, it just doesn't really work like that, and I feel like it's a super deep dive. You have to do a deep dive to actually get the metaphors and what they all mean. Then we go last up to Perfect Sense. I think Alex's vocals work really well on this, especially in conjunction with the amazingly produced string collection, and I think just the song sounds really good with the production and the vocals sounding amazing together. But overall, this album is pretty good. I definitely think it is a solid album, but I just think, like I said, with the metaphors, it's just a little bit too much of a deep dive for me. Like, I don't want to have to go into all these Genius pages and do all that just to find out what the lyrics actually mean. And especially when Alex's voice isn't the most clear sounding. He says it in a way that sounds good for the track, but it is a little weird, for me at least. But I still think this album is good. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. It's not anything super amazing, but I think there is still solid tracks in here. I think especially the back half is, pretty good tracks that I would listen to again and again.